Well, 7 hours ago, or something like that, Donald Trump made an appearance at the small Pennsylvania town of Gettysburg, where one tremendous thing happened, and then, believe it or not, something even more tremendous happened. Hi, everybody. I'm Bill Whittle here with Steve Green and Scott Ott, and this is the right angle on Trump's so-called Gettysburg Address, what it entails, and why it took so long to hear these wonderful things. So I'm just going to read you guys quickly. I'm not going to read the transcript of the speech or anything. We don't have time for that. But I will read you the email that Donald Trump sent me personally the day after, and he listed 8 points that he was going to do within his first 100 days. So let's just get those out on the field so we can talk about them. Build the wall, renegotiate all unfair trade deals, cancel all executive orders, work with Congress to repeal ObamaCare, lift the Obama regulations on the energy industry, propose, pass, and sign into law a massive tax cut, nominate Supreme Court Justice who will uphold the Constitution, and finally impose strict new ethics rules to restore the integrity of the office of Secretary of State. So let's just kind of do this a little differently, guys. I think maybe we just go through all 8 points back and forth, very quick answers. Scotty, number one, build the wall. What do you think? Can it be done? Should it be done?
I've never thought it was a practical way to approach the problem. I think that we should start, oddly enough, and I know this is not a popular view on my side of the aisle, but I think we should start with fixing the agency that handles immigration and the process by which immigration goes, because I think we have far too many good people who are stuck standing in line for years trying to get into this country legally, while a few are able to, or many are able to sneak in. I mean, right now the net flow is outward, and it has been for the last 4 years. It's actually to the south rather than to the north. But I don't think that a physical wall is the practical solution to the problem. I do think, however, and Donald Trump probably thinks this way too, I don't think he thinks that the wall is going to solve it. I think he thinks that the wall is a tangible avatar for what he believes, and therefore, he wants to do that. Now, whether he can get that through Congress, I have my doubts.
Steve, what about you? Renegotiating all unfair trade deals, do you think that flies in the face of the conservative idea of free markets, or do you think that we're being suckered and it's time to stop?
Well, first, I love free trade. Free trade. Every economist, whether you take the furthest libertarian economist or Paul Krugman, they all agree that free trade is best for the economy, and it is. That said, we haven't been negotiating free trade deals so much as we've been negotiating these comprehensive trade pacts.
Yep.
That put us into intellectual property hawk with Hollywood and all the rest of the stupid damage that these things do. On the other hand, things like that we shouldn't have done in the first place, like bringing China with all its corruption into the World Trade Organization, that was a huge mistake. But how do you detangle that mess? I don't know that there's a way to do it without blowing the WTO up, which would be throwing the baby out with the bathwater. That said, this is a good list, and this is a good item. I just don't want to go overboard and start a trade war, because that's how Great Depressions begin.
All right, Scott, back to you. I have to tell you, of all of the many things in this list, I think this is actually my favorite. Cancel all executive orders, bureaucratic rules, and crippling regulations that send American jobs overseas.
I would love to see that list, because I mean, it sounds like a laudable goal up top. You say, oh, wow, that's great. And I think if I understood correctly, when I read the 4-page version rather than the email, which I also saw, he talked about what many conservatives have said. Ted Cruz used to say this: I'm going to cancel on day one every illegal, unconstitutional executive order that Barack Obama ever signed. To which I always want to go, which ones are those? Is it just like everything that Barack Obama ever signed, or were there specific illegal and unconstitutional executive orders? If you're going to wipe the slate completely, I have no problem with that. Start fresh. That's okay. I think the devil is in the details in a lot of this stuff, including the trade policy. What is it about the trade policy specifically? What's in those trade deals that you don't like? Why would you want to renegotiate it? And I think what Trump is doing basically is he's propounding a problem, assuming the solution is based on something the government must have done, and therefore if we wipe out what government did, we'll solve the problem. I'm not fully convinced in either the case of trade or in the case of executive orders that that's true. I would love to see and heartily cheer an effort by the next executive to come in there and clean house and basically say, hey, let's go back to a legislative process for making law.
Well, that would be the law. Yeah, I'd like to see all of them repealed. I think they're all essentially illegal. Uh, the executive orders were designed so that if you wanted to increase the White House staff by 2, you could do it without having to pass a law through Congress.
Yeah.
You know, they've gained more and more power over the years and gotten worse and worse. Okay, Steve, this is a big one for those of us who've been in this fight for a while. Repeal Obamacare.
Oh, please. And not only that, you guys kind of hinted at this, but I've been saying for years that if I'm elected, I will push through Congress the Omnibus Do-Over Act of 2017 that would repeal pretty much everything going back to Medicare Part D in 2003, 2004, whatever that was. Yeah, we've got so much of this cruft. It's all got to go. And I want to talk about just veer off into trade for just a moment. You know, Trump is dead wrong on manufacturing. We make more steel than ever before. We manufacture more stuff than ever before. The thing is, we're so hot at it that we employ a lot fewer people doing it. China didn't take your manufacturing job. Automation did. Washington has broken the job creation machine, and that's why you don't have a new job making even more money.
Well, let's connect that to the next one, Scotty. Lift the radical Obama regulations on America's energy industry to end our dependence on foreign sources and create new jobs here at home. I've maintained for the longest time that now that we know that there's more energy directly under the feet of American people than there is in the world, essentially, that we could combat things like Asia's low labor costs with America's low energy costs. What do you think about getting all of this restrictions on new power plants and stuff and fracking and nuclear power and just chucking it out the window?
Well, the Department of Energy was created to end our dependence on foreign oil, I believe, during the Carter administration in like 1976, 77, somewhere around there. The reality is we're not dependent upon foreign oil. There is a world market for oil, and you can't build walls around it. We are refining oil that we're shipping overseas. We're selling our product overseas. We have plenty of oil of our own. Now, I would like that. I'm sure there are regulations that would free up exploration, especially if you look at the Alaska National Wildlife Refuge and areas up there where they wouldn't hurt any wildlife, but they could still be able to tap those rich veins of resources. One of the things you got to realize, though, is anytime you start turning the knobs and sliding the adjusters on this great machine called our economy and doing that from Washington, D.C., it will create unanticipated consequences. So what happens if we're suddenly able to tap these rich veins of oil in this country? Well, that means the price of oil drops. And you say, oh, well, that's great. The price of oil drops. Well, you know what happens when the price of oil drops? People lose their jobs. Investments lose their value. There are problems associated with all of these adjustments. And I'm not saying it wouldn't be a good thing for me to get 35 cents a gallon gasoline. I feel like that would be a good thing for me. But a lot of my neighbors here in Texas would be pretty darn upset about it. So it makes me nervous anytime I hear any of these politicians talking about how they're going to tweak the economy by doing this, that, or the other thing. In a general principle, I believe that we should give private businesses the freedom necessary to conduct their businesses and simply provide safeguards for guaranteeing contracts and for causing damage to the commons, as they used to call it, things that would affect all of us. But it should be with a very light hand that they do that.
It sounds to me that's exactly what he's proposing, is getting as many of these regulations out of the way.
I wish I could use the word
possible.
Exactly with anything that Donald Trump is proposing.
Oh, there you go. All right, Steve, you're going to have to find a pretty deep room of conservatives to find a person who has a problem with number 6. Propose, pass, and sign into law a massive tax cut for all working Americans and unleash the jobs-creating power of our small businesses.
Well, here's the problem. 47% of Americans pay no federal income tax. They pay a lot in wage garnishments. What are they called? Your benefits taxes.
FIFSA, what is it called?
Yeah, that FICA SOB.
FICA, thank you.
Yeah, so you pay your payroll taxes, but at least in theory, those come back to you at a later date in the form of benefits. You pay your Social Security tax, you get your Social Security when you retire. You pay your Medicare tax, you get your health insurance when you're older. And so those are benefits that if they're not paid for, you don't get. And we are at a place right now where there aren't enough taxes in the world, not in the world, to pay for Americans' entitlements. So you can't touch the payroll taxes because we're already, by some estimates, between $60 trillion and $120 trillion on the hook that we will never raise to pay for all these programs. And so if you want a massive income tax cut for the 53% of Americans who do pay income tax. Well, that's fine, but you're going to blow a hole in the deficit. So what I want to know is, how are we going to do two things? Cut government spending so that we can actually pay for some of these programs that the people have decided they need and want. I might disagree with them. And how do we cut the regulations that explode the economy in such a way that we can start to pay for more of this stuff? That's the trick. It's about eliminating the things that get in the way of growth. We've got to grow our way out of this mess. There's no other way.
Okay. Scotty, back to you. Nominate Supreme Court justices who will uphold the Founders' Constitution and not legislate the liberal agenda from the bench.
See, these are all just like sugary candy for us. I mean, these
works for me.
It's like,
red meat,
works
baby.
for me.
Put more
big
of
juicy
that.
steak.
Like that. I want more of that pumpkin in my pie hole. This is. It's hard not to see this as an 11th hour cynical ploy by a disorganized, unprincipled guy to throw stuff out there that he knows will be red meat to his base in hoping they'll gin up the GOTV. And I don't buy the argument that so many have made, which is, well, Trump is just learning. He's not a politician. He's just learning how to be a politician. Well, heck, this guy's been diddling with running for office for years, and he's surrounded by people telling him what to do. And now, just 2 weeks before the election, he's come up with the idea that he should stand for something. And what he stands for now is these vague pronouncements about how he's going to, appoint conservatives who are, back up the founders' vision of the Constitution. Duh. I mean, isn't that the part of the Republican platform? He's making it sound like some innovation. It's the same thing he did back during the primaries when Ted Cruz was giving him problems, and he suddenly releases this list of 20 people that he'll allegedly nominate. I said it then, I'll say it now. When push comes to shove and President Donald Trump, has to win over Democrats in the Senate, that list will become malleable and pliable and porous.
Okay. Steve, for you, the final one. Impose strict new ethics rules to restore the integrity of the office of the Secretary of State.
We've got so many ethics rules and virtually no way to enforce them. This one's, Scott called it a wish list. This one doesn't even amount to that. What we need is you know what we need? We need a president who's willing to go to Congress, and I haven't seen, this isn't Donald Trump, this isn't Gary Johnson, this isn't anybody, to go to Congress and say, listen, you got to get off your asses and do your jobs. Don't write legislation that's a wish list for the executive branch to interpret and become ever more dictatorial as it gains more and more powers that Congress cedes to it. You got to get off your asses, do your jobs, write real legislation that I can execute instead of trying to fulfill your vague little promises to the voters by concentrating all power in the executive branch. That's what we need, and that will build in the accountability into the executive branch right there.
That right there.
I have to tell you guys, I had a completely different experience with this, 100% different, and I'll just go through the points one by one. Well, let me first of all talk about the list.
Sure.
A list, when you have a GOP convention, you come up with a platform. The platform isn't legislation. The platform is a direction. The platform is a direction in which way to go. I look at every single one of these things on here and think, terrific, excellent. Build a wall? Okay. If Scott's right and building the wall means an indication that we're getting serious about having a border, then let's do it. NAFTA and unfair trade deals, I'm in favor of free trade, but I'm not in favor of having the United States have tariffs imposed on it when we don't impose tariffs back. I'd like to see that a little more equal, I think. Look, cancel all executive orders. To me, this is the holy grail.
Oh, yeah.
I find that that this is the entire idea of a dictatorial president is the executive order. And when Barack Obama says, hey, Congress, I'd love to do this with you, but if I don't, if you're not willing to come along with me, then I'll do it through executive order. That's the definition of a rubber stamp parliament.
Yep.
And canceling all of them would be my favorite thing on the list.
Hey, Bill,
how
about cancel all executive orders and then not do any more?
Well, that would be great.
Even
cancel
better,
all
yeah.
executive orders and then pass a legislation saying that they're illegal, basically. Repealing Obamacare, my God, I've been fighting for this for 7 years now, 7 years. As a direction for the country, I think it's absolutely right. It's repealing itself because of economic collapse. Another point 5. I've been saying this for a long time. we have so much energy under our feet that we're not allowed to get through federal regulations, not just federal regulations, also for cultural, social proof, like nuclear powers. We can't have nuclear power, and we can't have fracking. We can't have oil drilling, and there's lots of reasons why we can't have energy. And we sit at home in our multi-level houses with all the lights on, in air conditioning, watching on TV how we shouldn't have all of these energy sources. I think cheap energy allows us to compete with other countries' cheap labor when it comes to making widgets, and I think that's a terrific idea.
Yeah, the thing people forget now that so many jobs rely on oil isn't an output. Oil is an input. It's what makes everything else you want to do more affordable.
Yeah,
that's correct. Now, the tax cut, I remember a time in America where if somebody was saying, I'm running for a tax cut, and somebody else said, I'm running for a tax increase, that's a blowout.
Yeah.
Okay, blowout for the tax cut guys. The tax cut is the essence of conservative thinking as far as the economy goes. We don't believe that taking $1 out of our pocket, forcing it to go to Washington, having them deduct 50 cents, have them send it back to the local level where they deduct 25 cents, and then have incompetents take the other 20 cents, so we get 5 cents worth of product for our dollar. Cut taxes, for God's sakes. Let's make America the freest economy in the world. It used to be. We used to have the lowest corporate tax rate in the world, and that's when things are booming. Why isn't money coming here instead of Trump's money and Romney's money going someplace else? Because it's a smart thing to do. Look, Supreme Court justices, I think that goes without saying.
Yeah.
The horror of that. Not only Supreme Court justices, but somebody who can explain that the Supreme Court's job is not to legislate. Their job is not to say, this law we don't like. We don't think it's good for society. That's not their job. So that would be a lovely thing. And then ethics rules to restore the integrity of the Office of Secretary of State is the only one I have a little bit of a problem with, only because I'd like to see I don't need to see legislation. I'd like to see prosecution. Said persecution. It's probably what I meant. It's probably what I meant. It's probably what I meant. I've mentioned this before too. What would I do if we had an actual Justice Department? I would investigate it. I'd put everything out in the sunlight. I'd make it crystal clear what was done. I'd make it crystal clear what laws were broken. I would get convictions. I would get legal convictions, and then I would commute the sentences to time served. I don't think that we should start the habit of putting people in jail who were in the previous administration, but I do think that this thing needs to be aired out in a very, very big way.
And Bill,
so for me,
Bill,
yes.
Can I just say, if you had released this list, I'd be all for it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the messenger matters.
Of trust.
I understand the difference here. As far as I'm concerned, I thought his last debate appearance was better.
Oh, absolutely.
Much better.
Yeah.
And I think that for whatever reasons, he's becoming a better candidate for conservatives in America just in the last week or so. A lot of people still have their doubts. They're entitled to their doubts. Of all the things we fight for in this country and of all the things that we despise about the left, the thing that we fight for is a freedom to disagree and have free opinions. And the idea of a presidential candidate who's saying things to conservatives who may not be a conservative, at least historically, is a genuine worry. But as a list of things that I'd like to see done, I don't think it can be improved on. And if somebody's going to stand on this list, then I'm going to stand with them. That's my personal opinion, and I'm as entitled to it as anybody else in this country.
Right.
I just thought it was fun to see what it would look like. Maybe we can give it a chance. We've got a section on polling this week for our members only, but we'll probably release that to the public because there's some interesting news in that. And as we get closer and closer, we feel more and more stress and anxiety and all the rest of it. Let's just remember the one thing that is going to be here after November 9th is the American people and their principles and their courage. We've never lost those things, and we've been in worse trouble than this.
That's right.
I can't remember when we've been in worse trouble than this, but I'm assuming we have been. That's right. Freedom is about freedom, right? Freedom is about freedom, and freedom is about freedom. And if freedom's not about freedom, then it's not about freedom, right? Thank you very much for that brilliant soliloquy. On behalf of all of our members here at BillWhittle.com, thank you very much for your membership. Thanks for supporting actual, genuine free speech. And thanks again for keeping the lights on here as we continue to fight for this election and then fight the forces of darkness if they should prevail. And let's just hope that they don't.
Bingo.